Welcome back, smart guys and gals. CJ the Smart Guy with you. And this episode, I'll be talking about family, right? Family is very, very important. From a spiritual perspective, it's important because, you got generational blessings, you got generational curses. You can look all throughout the Bible where it says, hey, where it comes to King David, his whole bloodline is going to be blessed. And so from a spiritual perspective, family is important. From a worldly perspective, family is important. Not just from a genetic skills perspective, but also being able to understand who you are, where you fit in, and generational wealth, building each other up, as well as trying to prevent generational curses, which is tearing each other down. And so when it comes to my personal family, we just had our first family reunion since COVID. A lot of the older people during COVID, they were like, let's not have the family reunion, let's put it on pause, simply because they were trying to protect themselves, protect the elderly and not die from a disease. And then also you don't want that one virus to destruct the entire family. I definitely give my condolences to those families where they gave each other COVID and some of them passed away. I think that it is very important to be grateful for your family, whether it's functional or dysfunctional. You can definitely learn a lot when it comes to family. The Bible talks a lot about dysfunctional families as well as families that are functional. And so I think that's very important. When I look at my personal family, I have a lot of cousins, and I don't know how many cousins I have, but just so you know, my mom is the youngest of 10, and then one of the 10 has 10. So it's an enormous family. I have a whole bunch of cousins, cousins, second cousins, and I've gotten to know a lot of them. Most of them are women. And I think that the effect of having that many women in my family, I've gained an appreciation for women as not just beautiful creatures, but actually get to know them, get to understand them, understand how they think, as well as, be able to provide, protect, when it's necessary. And so I think that having that family structure is extremely important. I see a lot of people having kids out of wedlock or having deadbeat fathers, or the mothers taking their kids away from the father, just things like that. And I feel like those either create or perpetuate family curses, generational curses, because at the end of the day, when you're a baby, that is the time when you are the most impressionable. That's the time when you're learning the most, so you want to learn from mommy and daddy. You may not understand it fully, but you want to at least be able to have those impressions. And I also think that supporting kids when they're young is the most important. I look at my parents, my dad, my mom, they were team mom and coaches of all my teams when I was young, for many, many years. And so it gave me a lot of a foundation to know, hey, this is mom, this is dad. And so when things got crazy in the real world, I always had a foundation. And I feel like every kid should have that foundation, at least those first 8 years of life. I think those are the most important years. Because once you're 8, 9, 10, you kind of sort of start to figure out how the world works, and you start to have your own personality and figure it out. But those first 8 years, I think, are crucial. And so if any of y'all ever having kids, just make sure you understand, hey, at least be there those first 8 years as much as possible. And I think when I look at the Bible, a lot of times, because I'm trying to create a family, I'm trying to find a wife, I'm trying to figure all that stuff out. I think the one biggest, hole in the Bible, it's not a hole, but for me, it's a hole in a blueprint, is the sense that Jesus never got married. So, we're supposed to follow Jesus, do the things he did, feed people, teach people, heal people, but he never married. So you don't really quite know the proper way to court a woman. You don't know the proper way to treat them, when to, hold them responsible versus getting upset. There is none of that. It definitely talks about Boaz and King Solomon and King David, some pros, cons to different husbands or whatnot, but it doesn't show Jesus. Nobody's perfect. And so I think that is a piece to where it's well, that wasn't the main goal of your purpose in life. You should get married. You should have kids. It definitely talks about multiply and being fruitful. But at the same time, that wasn't something that Jesus did. So we don't have that direct blueprint. However, that's not an excuse. We should still do our best. It also talks about how when a man finds a wife, he finds favor with the Lord. Personally, I believe that that's the case because a woman is typically a reflection of yourself. I think when you have an accountability partner who's going to hold you accountable daily, that's a reflection of yourself, because the actions that you take, not only do you have to deal with it yourself and deal with it with God, but now you have a human form who's going to be looking at you, and whether they're judging you, helping you, or hurting you, you're going to have to deal with that. And so I think that that's part of the favor with the Lord is, hey, you have to some degree be reflective or deal with consequences. And so I look at like how my mom was a teacher. That helped me out a lot when I was a kid because my mom taught me math. She taught me English at a young age. I was able to excel in school at a very fast pace because my mom already taught me. She was a teacher. So when I was in school, it wasn't that I was learning it. I was just reviewing it most of the time. And I look at how my dad, he's a musician and a computer programmer. And even though I don't personally work with a lot of music, my brothers do, my sister does. And I typically deal with the computers, whether it's in, cryptocurrency, understanding the blockchain, understanding computers, or when I worked at Apple, I was on the business team there. Those types of things. I think genetics are very important. And even some of the other skills and talents that I have that may not have come from my mom or dad, they probably came from my grandparents. Like, the name of this podcast is called Numbers Guy. And I have both grandmas on both sides, my mom and my dad, that were either bankers or accountants. And so generational talents, skills can be passed on as well as negative things. So I think that if there was one thing I would want you to get out of this is to appreciate your family. My dad always taught me, put God first, family second, education third. For me, it was then sports, and then it was everything else. I think now sports has been replaced with career as an accountant. However, it's the same exact concept. God first, family second, education third, career fourth, everything else comes next. So I'm grateful for those teachings. And some will say that family is not defined by blood, it's defined by loyalty. And I agree with this as well. But remember, genetics is important. When you are creating children, DNA is passed. When you have other types of family, whether adoption, whether a church group, a gang of people, those are types of families as well. But nothing can actually replace DNA because DNA is more of a spiritual connection versus a worldly connection. But I do love having families across the world. I have different family. I got baseball family. I have run families. I have church families. I have college families. I've got high school families. Like, we look at each other as family without a doubt. Shout out to my brothers, Gerald and Stephen. Like, we're family, period. But there's also DNA family. And that DNA family, generational blessings and curses can be passed through. So remember that before you create a family. You should be thinking about your family before you actually create a family. So I appreciate y'all for listening. May God bless you. May God bless your family. Make sure that you put your family as a priority. Don't sacrifice them for any types of money or fame or career. Generational blessings can be created through you as well as generational curses. So let's stick to the blessings. CJ the Smart Guy. Love y'all. I'm out. Deuce.